I love to speak in front of businesses and have learned this much about business and have a lot more to learn. But I'm glad to be here and share with you about Adventure Park. So how many of you have heard about Adventure Park? Okay, pretty much all of you. And so the number one question I get is, when are you opening? And why aren't you open? And so I'll discuss that here in a few minutes, but I kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about why Adventure Park started, kind of a little bit about our story. So this is our oldest daughter. In the left-hand corner, that's Sage, who's a senior right now, and my husband and myself. And so his family are the owners of Rel Arena, which is over 60 years old, been in Lubbock for a really long time. And so you could say that entertainment's in his blood. We own several businesses, and I'm sure all of you can relate that you get to a time in business where it's like, this really isn't that fun anymore. And you kind of go back to like, what do I love to do, and what's my passion? And our passion is really our family. You can see to the right, we did plan all these children. We didn't plan to have them 10 years, well actually we did plan to have them that far apart. So we have kids ranging from 22 to 6. That we've had people ask us, like, do you know about birth control? Do you know how that happens? I'm like, obviously we know how it happens, like we're pretty good at it. But so needless to say, there's 10 years difference between our two middle kids. That makes it a little bit complicated when you're on a family vacation and you're looking for things to do. And so you combine that kind of like, where did we start, and what do we love in family, and that's really kind of how Adventure Park happened. About 10 years ago, my husband owned a Lansing company, we did real estate, and I had marketing. And when you're driving around and meet people at marketing and small business owners who I predominantly work with, the number one thing you hear about Lubbock is, there's nothing to do in this town. And that's a rumor. There's plenty to do. I'm just going to put that out there. So much to do, we don't have time to do it. But there is plenty to do in Lubbock. But that is the kind of the rumor and the gripe about Lubbock. And so audaciously, 10 years ago, I would have been in my 30s, young 30. And so I told him, I was like, we should do something about this. And he's like, you are crazy. Like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know. So we went and looked at what is, lovingly known as the Putt-Putt tract for us. And we went and looked at that. And at the time, it was about 36 acres. And they wanted to sell it all in one tract. The price tag was around $5 million. Needless to say, in our 30s, and even now, we didn't have $5 million that we could stick aside, so that really wasn't an option. But that's really kind of where the dream started. That was the first piece of property that we looked at. We looked at, from that point, we really kind of looked at, okay, what does Lubbock have? What is the need? What do other communities have our size? And we really started looking at this idea of developing this great attraction, kind of entertainment district for Lubbock. So when you look at other cities, you see these green spaces and you see these attractions that are kind of laid out and kind of commingled together. And when you drive around Lubbock, you see lots of buildings and lots of parking, but we don't have a lot of green spaces. And so that's really kind of our idea and how it started. We started looking at land downtown and all over. And about 4.5 years ago, really went back, drove up to Putt-Putt. Had not had a fire at the time. We drove, so that tells you kind of timeline. And drove up to it and called a friend of mine that's a broker, and I said, hey, is this still for sale? And she's like, yeah, there's only 33 acres now. Instead of 36, they sold some to the city. And she said, I don't think you could put an offer on it. She said they've had some challenges with the city. And that should have been clue number one that this was going to be hard. When they said they're having challenges with the city's been great to work with, but that probably should have been number one clue, that if they were having challenges with their vacant property with the city, that might be a road that we were going to embark on. So needless to say, we were able to put in a contract, basically met with investors, pitched the idea, and we work with we have 30 investors that are involved in our project. We couldn't do it without them, and they believed in the idea. It brings something great to Lubbock, and so that's where it started. So, oops, I knew I was going to do that. I'm not like patient to wait. So if you look at our development, and I'm going to walk over here just so I can kind of point, because I don't know where the pointer is, or if I have one. So originally, like I said, it was about 33 acres. Not all of that. Some of that we divided up and different things. But Adventure Park is essentially, so this, if you look at this from the go-kart to here, that would have been the old Putt-Putt. So that's about 6 acres. They also have, this is a 14-acre tract of land. You know, if the real estate people know in the room, it's like, why would you want to own this tract of land? It's lake, it's got, you know, water easements on it, flood easements, utility easements. I had to really talk our investors into why we want to buy this lake. And actually come up with how that would work. You know, how do you now, if you have this huge amount of land, how do you profit from that? And so Adventure Park basically is 20 acres. We do own the land next to Adventure Park. This is kind of where our hope is to really do this green community space. And then the aquarium has been donated 2 acres from the original landowner, and then we donated an acre to the aquarium. So that's kind of how they all intertwine together. The aquarium is a nonprofit. We get asked that a lot. It's not an Adventure Park project. It is a nonprofit, and will need to sustain and do its own thing. But the thing that we liked when we brought our consultants in to take a look at Lubbock, and if you've never done that, I highly suggest you fly people in to Lubbock and drive around with them. Because it's really interesting that they think you don't know that you live in an ugly town. And they're like, did you guys think this through when you put this here? I'm like, I don't work for the city. No, I didn't think that through. I just live here. It is interesting, and they say some things that you're like, I can't believe that came out of your mouth. You're obviously not from West Texas. There are just things that you don't say in West Texas. But we loved the land, mostly because it had, I mean, to us, it had been a Putt-Putt. So originally when we brought people in, I can tell you, we fought hard. We're like, let's revitalize this, and let's keep the you know, can we keep any part of the golf? And we brought in golf consultants, and they're like, no, demo it. We brought in a guy for the go-kart, and he's like, you can keep that. And we're like, okay. And then we brought in feasibility study to look at the land, and they're like, here's what you're buying. You're buying a tract of land that happens to have a go-kart. You need to get excited about that. And we're like, okay. That makes we were sitting around at lunch at Fuddruckers, and we had our GC, a couple investors, and they looked over at me and they're like, you do know that is like millions more. I go, I know. I don't know what they thought I was going to do about it, but I did know that. But we love the location. We love that, you know, we were under contract when the fire happened. I would say I would not suggest that for anyone. If you're ever under contract and there's a fire, that means you're under investigation. That was a little concerning. We, you know, had nothing to do with fire. It was just, you know, I would suggest you don't add that to your resume to be under investigation. So luckily, they were able to find out, you know, that the kids that kind of had something to do with that, we didn't have anything to do with that, so that was good. So owning a business in a project like this, whether you have a small business, a large business, a medium business, work with businesses, is a lot like a roller coaster. And that has been what this project has been a roller coaster. There are days that I'm like, why in the world did we want to bring this thing to Lubbock? Like of all places. And so it has absolutely been a roller coaster, but we've learned a lot about our city, about just the people within our city, even more than we knew when we started. Lubbock has got a great economy, and I know Carolyn can speak to that as well. So, in 2014, we were named the 12th best place to start a business. It is a great economy. We kind of are in our own little bubble, and we take that for granted because we do have healthcare, and we've got education and agriculture. So we're in our little bubble, and we are pretty protected as far as what goes on in the national economy. So it is a great place to start a business. We do have a lot of low unemployment rates, so it's a great place to live and work. We're the 11th largest city in Texas, if you didn't know that, and the 85th in the United States. Is that so accurate? I feel like I need to ask Carolyn. Is this accurate? Yeah, because I did this a year ago, so if it's not accurate, I should have a disclaimer on there. When you think about Lubbock, one thing when we bring in consultants and we talk about Lubbock is I try to explain to them what a hub Lubbock is, and we call it the hub city, and what does that really mean? There are so many people that come to Lubbock and shop and eat and go to the doctor, and so we really are the hub for a lot of things. And I was talking to a consultant one time, and he was like, "Why do you think that is?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And he goes, "Well, okay, let's think about it." He goes, "If you lived in Abernathy or Clovis, where's the closest place for you to go? Where's your big city?" I was like, "Well, this is obviously a big city." And I said, so I guess that Lubbock for them is like us with Dallas. Like, we go to Dallas, we go eat, shop, and do things. And so to this outlying community, we're their Dallas. We have a very diverse market as far as population and ethnic. I was amazed by this. We've got over 52,000 college students in our town. So that's a great number. And so for those of you that represent and have college students that are a part of your world, it's a great thing to tap into. I just think this is interesting. Since you guys are business owners or work in business, this just kind of shows you how it's divided up as far as Lubbock and employment. And so I think it's interesting to see the amount of where employment is in Lubbock and how that's kind of divided up. Obviously, Lubbock is growing. I don't know if y'all have dealt with construction. I'm sure you haven't. It's just me. Marcia Sharp is wider. Other streets are getting wider, and we're making it easier to get around, but also harder to get around if you live here. And so Lubbock is growing. This is the two hotels that are across the street from Adventure Park, the Days Inn and Comfort Suite with the Conference Center. We could not have picked a better neighbor. Like if we would have, we didn't know they were coming, they didn't know about us. But how many of you would love to have people looking over your entertainment center looking for something to do? So we're extremely excited that they're there. But I mean, there's growth all over. You can look at Marcia Sharp, you can look at Milwaukee, and there's literally growth happening all over. This is a little bit more detail about how many students are enrolled within our colleges. As far as Wayland, South Plains, and Lubbock Christian. And this is just like Lubbock schools, which these are just things that we found interesting. So when we did our feasibility, the things that when you look at our property, we had a couple of consultants that were like, "Why did you pick this property?" And I'm like, "Well, people know it for entertainment, and it is very central." And so we're down the street from the top employers in Lubbock. So we've got 35,000 people near our project that are employed. So when you think about Tech, Covenant, UMC, the city, the county, those are our big employers, and they're literally down the road from us. And so people are on Marcia Sharp, driving by our property all the time, and that's a good thing. So those are things that you want to consider if you are looking at locations. You want to consider where people are naturally traveling in business, whether you're adding locations or in an existing location. Hotel occupancy within 5 miles from us, we've got around 266,000. And so that's another thing that we looked at as far as how close to the property, where are people staying. Most most of us know that healthcare and education, they're staying kind of in that central downtown area. So how many people like entertainment? So IAPA is a national kind of entertainment guru. They're an association that basically if you're Six Flags, you're a member. If you're Disney, you're a member. And if you're an adventure park, Lubbock, Texas, you're a member. And so museums, zoos, it's a great place for information. So typically, their study showed 2016, the average attendance for what is called, ours is called a family entertainment center. So you've got amusement, you've got family entertainment center, and then you've got kind of museums and zoos. It's 282,000 annually. So what does that mean? What does all that mean? As a business owner, you guys probably realize this, or even if you work for a company and you're an executive company, most of us are used to wearing lots and lots of hats. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to wear lots of hats and overschedule myself. And so this morning, I started out with an appointment at 8 o'clock, a conference call at 8:30, this at 9 o'clock. I was at the USDA instead of here because I was smarter than Google, and I was like, I don't know where this is at. And then I drove up, and I'm like, there is no sign. And this lady's walking up, I was like, is this Innovation Hub? She goes, no, it's across the street. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes you should look things up. I did have the address, but I just thought I knew where I was going. So we're busy. You know, we are, whether you are doing books in your business, marketing in your business, whether you're your best salesperson, manager, HR, all of those things are hats that we wear with our businesses. And some of those hats, I'm sure just as you, I don't like all the hats that I wear, but they do have a purpose and a rhyme and a reason. And so what's good is to know to keep your focus on what the end goal is. So I'll tell you a little bit more about Adventure Park. I talked about it being 20 acres. So we've got indoor and outdoor attractions. Our indoor facility will be about just under 15,000 square feet. Game room, spin zone, laser maze, indoor rock wall. Party room, so we'll be able to host parties, do corporate events, and then we'll have a cafe and patio. So we've got great weather in Texas. We wanted to take advantage of that. And so we've got indoor and outdoor eating. And then our outdoor space, which I'm going to go into a little bit more in depth. If you've never been on a spin zone, they're lots of fun. So this is the spin zone in the right-hand quarter. This is, so it's kind of like a bumper car, except it's a newer bumper car. So when you bump into somebody, there's targets on it, and you basically can make them spin. And my daughter tried it. I mean, the first time she did it, she was not quite 4. And I was like, if a 4-year-old can do this, she's actually the best one in our family. Like, I don't know how she does it. I'm like, how do you have this much skills? You're 6 now. Like, how are you, like, we did it this past weekend in Doritos, and I'm like, how are you so good at this? Like, you do not drive a car. I should be better at this than you. But it is. It's a lot of fun. Wide age group. Even kids, even toddlers, there's a seat that can go in the front, so even toddlers can enjoy, and so that'll be a lot of fun. And then our cafe, so we were able to be blessed with about, of our 30 investors, about 20 of them have restaurant experience. That was the one thing when we brought in consultants. So the things I said is, I don't want to own an arcade, and I don't want to have a restaurant. So sometimes you have to be flexible. So the first guy that we brought in, he goes, what is your deal with arcades? I was like, they're so loud. I was like, I have kids, it's busy all the time. I don't want to own an arcade. Like, that's just more kids and more busy. And he's like, well, they're about 25% of your revenue. I was like, okay, maybe we can figure out a way to have an arcade.